Happy, what's it, Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the very last episode, I guess, of this very first Mastermind DevOps Bootcamp. We are on episode 24. We just skipped two, so we're really on 22, but this is supposed to be number 24. Welcome. This is the Cracking the Interview. This is all about the interview process for DevOps engineering. This is going to span across to other things like software engineering as well. This is kind of all encompassing of all, I guess, technical engineering interviews. There's going to be some differences and we'll highlight some of those things, but that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But as usual, we're going to give people a few minutes to kind of get logged on, get ready to go. As you can see, I'm in a different area tonight, so I'm streaming from a different place. I probably will be streaming from where I'm at now from now on. So I'll get the camera angle a little bit better. I just kind of had to get it set up today, but I'll make it a little more special in the coming weeks. But yeah, we've made it. So give yourselves a hand. You know, if you've made it this whole time, we've done 12 weeks of learning a lot of different. This was kind of jam packed with different things, different topics, different concepts. So great job getting through all those things. People have been asking a lot of great questions. People have been answering a lot of great questions. So I really appreciate kind of how you guys worked with each other and helped get everyone up to speed on a lot of these things. Hopefully you're not, because it was a lot, I'm hoping everyone's not at this point is like frustrated because you don't know everything. You shouldn't know everything. Again, this was an introductory session to really kind of get your hands on each of the concepts, each of the big building blocks of DevOps. So hopefully you understand what those concepts are. Hopefully you understand what those topics are. And hopefully now it gives you some runway to be able to dive into each of these things and get better and better and better at them. I did want to set up, what did I want to set up? I wanted to set up one of the chat commands I forgot to set up tonight. I want to give you guys a link because we're going to be hitting some DevOps interview questions off of here. Did I save it? 1 second. I'll pull it up. during once everyone gets on. We'll find it. I found a really cool GitHub repo that broke down a lot of DevOps interview questions. So we're going to go through some slides tonight as usual. Hop through a couple of high-level concepts about the interview process, what you should expect, what you should do to prepare, and then we'll hop into some real questions and we'll start talking about how you kind of want to answer these things and approach these different types of questions to really make yourself shine. But how's everybody doing tonight? You know, I mean, it's getting cold outside now, which I don't really love. Even though I do like the fall, it's starting to get cold. It's making me a little bit sad. But yeah, I know time also, I wake up pretty early in the morning and I'm gonna appreciate time going back an hour because right now when I wake up really early, it's like super dark for a really long time and I wanted to get light a little bit sooner. So that will be good. Abyss, super important to me, a sudden change in my department. Immediately rather, yeah, I mean, it always sucks when you have to look for a new job with sudden notice, but it's good. I'm glad. Hopefully a lot of this stuff will stick with you. You'll be able to speak about it in the interview. That's kind of the biggest thing. Once you can speak about the stuff, you can make someone believe that you actually know the stuff. So hopefully this will help, and hopefully tonight will give you some tips and tricks into doing that as well. But yeah, that GitHub repo, yeah, it's a really good repo. Like I was just searching around, like I was taking some of the questions that I had, like when we interview people, some of the questions that I ask, and kind of doing some research on the questions I've been asked and like kind of remembering those things. And I hopped into Google and started doing some Googling and I wasn't finding a lot of great things. Like I was just finding technical questions, but I didn't think were great DevOps questions. And then I found a couple of repos actually, but I found one in particular that was really, really good. So, we'll definitely be going over some of that. Maybe you can go through and it might be a good prep to kind of go through those questions to at least just feel the types of things that you might get asked. But I also don't think tonight, tonight's going to take, it might take 2 hours. Depends on how many questions we want to run through. But yeah, we can get started. We can get started now. So we've learned all of the tools. We learned all the concepts, all the major concepts to DevOps. We've done the legwork there. We spent the last 12 weeks doing that. And now we really want to go out and we want to start interviewing. We want to put our resume out there. We want to get ready to get a job. What do we need to know? What do we need to do? What should we expect? Let's click in. Cool. So first, the question is like, how do I get an interview? Like, saying, preparing for the interview is one thing, but like, how do I even go about getting an interview? And I think this is important to talk about first. And a lot of people asked it last time, questions around this last time during the engineering panel. So I appreciate those questions, but how do you get an interview? One of the biggest things is to first do your research. Find out what people are looking for. How do you do that research? One, you can talk to people. You can find out from DevOps engineers, hiring managers. Find out those things. One of the biggest forms of research is just looking at job descriptions. We looked at job descriptions on the very first stream. You start to see a pattern. You start to see the same things over and over again, and so those patterns should start to tell you what at least you should be able to speak about, or what you should have on your resume, or what you should dive into. So do some research and find out, what the market is looking for. It doesn't always have to be the thing that's the most popular. I've seen people actively move towards, again, things that are, a little more niche, because the jobs were a little bit easier to get or more lucrative, just because the pool of candidates was smaller. But whatever it is you want to do your research. Find out, people who are doing the things that you want to do. Find out what they believe you need to know. Get some advice from them on what you need to have on your resume. But know what you're going into. And I think if you've gone through this, that's part of the process. And then the second thing is to prepare your marketing material. So what you're really doing is you're preparing you are marketing yourself. You are, just like if you were a product, you are marketing off your skills, your services, to a company. So prepare those marketing materials. And again, marketing materials are just your things that you like to show off. So, your resume being number one. So make sure you just have that together and make sure it has the things on it that it needs to have. Now the question is, what does it need to have on it? It should have on it, one, things that give a pretty picture of the things that you've done, even if what you haven't done is a lot. Make sure the things on there are worded in a way where you emphasize the things that you've done that you're proud of. No matter how small, if something you're proud of, make sure you can put that on there, and I guess tailor it towards different things in the industry, as well. So, I mean, the more buzzwords, the better, unfortunately, just because of the discoverability of resumes. The more buzzwords, the better. But yeah, I don't know. It takes some time. I mean, this is something where I would absolutely think about investing. Put out some money in and hire someone who can help you create a resume. Because we see a lot of these things. Hiring managers see a lot of resumes, and trying to make yours stand out and have the right things on there really helps for that. And the third thing I have on here is network. So a lot of people try to do a lot of this on their own, and you can absolutely get a job on your own. You can find companies that you want to work for. You can scour all the job boards, and you can find those things. You can apply to them, and you can get lucky. Or your resume is great. You have all the experience, and people love you, so they hire you. But or you get the interview. But what really helps as well is to network. People like who they like, and people would rather work with people they know. And when I say know, that just means I've met you before. I've had a small conversation with you, so I know that you're a reasonable person. You're not, well, at least at first glance, you're not super crazy. I feel like I could work with you. People like people like that. They like to, they like to work with who they're familiar with. And networking is a great way to get an interview, to get in the door at places that you never would have gotten your foot in the door at if you just use your marketing materials. So networking, very, very, very important. Use each other, like even right here in the chat, in the Slack, use each other, hop on social media, use each other. And then the last thing is flood the market. So this is one that most people don't do. People get frustrated. They say, I've sent out 20 resumes and I haven't got any callbacks. Forget that, especially if this is your first foray into a new industry. Flood the market. Jobs that you don't match what you want perfectly, apply for those things. Jobs that have, just a few of the keywords that you're looking for, apply for all of them. You need to be sending out hundreds and hundreds of resumes. It's a numbers game, completely a numbers game. And most people don't realize that. They're like, hundreds of resumes. Yes, absolutely. Like every job that you can find on any job board that matches anything you're looking for, and apply for it. Like, don't be afraid, apply for it. Stuff you're not qualified for at all, apply for it. You will get some callbacks. guaranteed. Again, it's a numbers game. Put your resume out there. Don't be afraid to flood the market. Like, you need to be putting out an uncomfortable number of resumes. And again, this is particularly more towards people entering the industry. And I think that's the information people are looking for right now. But like, if you're entering the industry or you're very early in your career and looking for a little bit better of a job, flood the market with your resume. Cool. So after you get, so you do all that, you put yourself out there, and you get yourself an interview. Usually they'll reach out to you via email or phone call and let you know, hey, got your resume. We like what we read. We would like to set up an initial phone screen. And this is just usually part of the process. So, disclaimer, everyone everywhere does interview processing differently. This is kind of, these are I'm going over the common pieces that you'll get across the board. So you may skip one of these steps. You may go through 2 or 3 rounds of one of these steps, but these are some things that you'll probably see when you are searching for a job. And again, the first piece is that phone screen, that initial phone screen. And it is a screen, and we'll talk about that in a second. But all the phone screen is, they'll call you, they'll set up a time with you. Usually it's 30 minutes or an hour. And they'll say, hey, we just want to get to know you a little bit, talk about what you want, talk about what we want, and see if this is a good fit to move forward with. So that phone screen, first impressions can mean a lot. So this is going to be the first time you get to talk to anyone, most likely the first time you get to speak with anyone from that company. And first impression can mean a ton. This is not always the case, but a lot, you really want to do your best to make a first impression that is good. And how can you do that? One, this one I didn't take too seriously, but I've heard recently, I've had people tell me like, hey, like I did not get a job. So the feedback was that I was not somewhere quiet. They could hear a lot of stuff in my background. I was going for a remote gig, but make sure you can get to somewhere that's quiet. You have the opportunity to set up the time and the place for the phone screen. Make sure you can get somewhere, dedicate some space, dedicate some time to that. Sometimes that can be hard, especially if you're taking the screen during the workday. We're busy. You might already have a job, and taking that during the day is usually tough. See if you can just get to the car or something like that. Do your best to get somewhere quiet. That helps a lot. It makes you seem a little more prepared, like you planned for this. So try to do your best to get somewhere quiet. Next, the screen part is important. So this is a phone screen. So what they're looking to do right now is to weed out anyone who's really not a good fit for various reasons. Not a great tech. I think we generally think of these things as all technical interviews, but they're not at all. And they'll be screening for a lot of things. Like, hey, like, one, do you even want this job? Like, usually the company's taking some time to tell you, hey, this is what we need. We have this posting out here. This is what we need. This is kind of what the gap that we want this position to fill, and to find out what you want. What are you looking for in your next role? What are you looking for in the future? Do those things kind of align? And so that's the first thing, making sure those things are together. Because if you're saying, hey, I'm looking to be a CTO tomorrow, and this is just a stepping stone, maybe that's not a fit for them. Or if the job says it's a DevOps engineer, but mostly you're going to be a software engineer, and that's not what you want to do. You want to work on infrastructure and you want to work through the pipelines. Then maybe that job isn't for you, and the phone screen is to help kind of determine that. And so that's the first piece. Then they'll also screen you on usually a little bit of technical stuff. Usually there won't be in-depth technical questions at all. It's usually just finding out about your background and seeing if your background matches up a little bit with what they're looking for. And the last piece is usually some kind of cultural interview piece of it as well, to see if you can hold a conversation, see if you can see if you seem like someone they could work with. That can be a good thing and a bad thing. I think people improperly use cultural interviews pretty often, but it is part of that screening process. And remembering that it's a screen is important. This is kind of a quick weed out type of thing. And then this is your first opportunity to really take control of the process. You can really make a statement here. Again, first impressions can mean a lot. And this is your opportunity to show either how much you really want this position, how good of a fit you are for this position. It's really your opportunity to kind of to start to take some of the control in that process. Because generally, we sit back when we're interviewing places. It's like, hey, like I want this job. I want to work for this company, but you're an asset to them. It's a mutually beneficial setup here. So, I think because of that mindset, usually the company in question, the company interviewing, has control. But this is your opportunity to take some of that control and to, I guess, skew some things and turn some things to your benefit. The next thing, and this is something that a lot of people don't do either, is research the company. So you have a phone screen with the company. You know the name of it. You know who they are at this point. Go find out what they do. You don't need to know super in depth. Like, I know all of your customers, but like, understand what it is that they do. Understand what problem it is that they're solving. Just so you can talk about that with the person screening. That makes you look good. Also, it gives you a lot of information. You never know, if you may not want to work for a company who builds missiles. You may not want to work for, maybe you hate cats, and this company does a lot of things that caters towards cats because you're a dog person. But it's important to know what the company does to make sure that aligns with what you want to do or what you want to be associated with as well. And the last thing is just come with questions. Come to the phone screen with questions during the research of the company. Come to them with questions. And again, that can be anything. That could be about what they do, how they do it. It can be about compensation. It can be about benefits. Come with questions to show that, hey, I'm serious about this. I am interested in this. And again, I want to make sure that this is a setup that is beneficial for both of us, and I want to make sure I have all the information before making my decision. So that is the phone screen. In general, like almost always, you're going to have some type of phone screen. Sometimes it's like a Skype screen. I've seen Skype screens as well, but usually you'll have some type of screen before the main interview ever happens. Let's see here. So, do phone screens tend to have technical elements versus just basic personality? Yeah, sometimes they do. I haven't had a lot with a ton of really deep technical questions. They're usually pretty high level, like, oh, I see here in your resume, Docker. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've used it, or something like that? Usually, you don't get any tough technical questions on the phone screen. Usually. And this is not to be confused with the phone interview. I mean, you can get to the main rounds and it'd be over the phone. This is just usually part of the process, a quick screen, usually our screen that kind of asks those things. But usually I don't see any tough technical elements as a part of the phone screen at all. Rejection is something to get conditioned for. Yeah, 880 brings up a great point. You can, again, we say this is a screening process. You can absolutely get booted from the process during this part. It doesn't always mean that you are a bad candidate. It means that you are not a quite fit for that job. Usually, it could be because you asked for too much money. It could be because, again, what you said you wanted in the position did not align at all with what they're looking for. Maybe they were looking for someone to stay and grow at that company, and you've told them already that your plans were to work there for 2 years and leave, or something like that. There's a lot of reasons. So do prepare yourself for rejection throughout the whole process. That gets really tough. That goes into the failure stuff that I talked about in some of my YouTube videos. It's something that you can absolutely get used to. It does suck. It is awful. The first time's always bad. The second time gets a little better, and the second time gets a little better, and then you don't mind it so much. You start to learn through the process what you have to bring to the table. And if people don't want that, that's okay. That's okay. And it's good to get comfortable with that rejection, because unless you're comfortable with rejection, you won't strive to go for those tougher jobs that are kind of just out of your reach, ones that are a little bit of a stretch of your skills. I think that you should be going for those things, and you usually won't go for stuff like that if you are not comfortable being rejected. And again, it takes a while to get there, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind, that rejection is part of this process, and mentally doing what you need to do to come to terms with that is very, very important. What type of questions would you recommend specific to the company and their stack? So I usually ask a lot of stack questions, Abyss. Like, I almost always ask, like, hey, like, you say you just said CI/CD on here. What are you guys using for your CI tools? Maybe I'll ask something about their branching strategy, like how they can't always give you the answers to those questions because sometimes those things are proprietary and they don't want to give them out. But usually, I'll ask things like that. especially if they say they're looking for containerization. I usually ask about, what kind of orchestration tool are they using, if they're using any at all. And I usually ask about like size of teams, like, yeah, if I'm going to be part of this company, like what's the size of the team that I might be working on? Because I think that's important. You may not want to work on a huge team. You might want to work on a small team, or vice versa. So I would ask really any question that comes to mind, but I generally ask mostly, I start with some technical questions, and then I usually move into the culture things. Usually I ask a lot of benefits questions. I don't usually ask about compensation this early. I will give them compensation information if they ask. I will give them my ranges and things like that, but I usually don't ask about that at this point. I usually ask about benefits because benefits are important to me. I do care about the total compensation package, but I do like to get a feel for work-life balance and kind of things like that. So I ask a lot of questions around that. Let's see. Have nothing to do with you at all. Too many questions. I don't think so. Usually this is a meeting that's time capped. Usually they'll give you, most of the time, someone will give you access to them afterwards. Say, hey, if you have any more questions, compile them into an email for me and shoot it out to me, and I'll try to get those questions answered for you. You can usually ask that if you feel like you have too many questions. If you read the person a little bit, if you feel like if you're asking too many questions, or if it feels like they think you're asking too many questions, ask. If you say, hey, do you mind if I grab your email and compile a list of my questions and shoot them off to you? I would really appreciate that. And almost always they'll be compliant to that, and they would love to do that for you. So, yeah, try to keep it within the bounds set. People are busy. Like I said, it's usually half an hour to an hour for a phone screen. That is a good one. And maybe let me copy some of that down so I can put some of that stuff in the Slack. But ask how performance is measured. That's really good. I've never asked that one, and that is a great one. Ask how performance. That's a good one because a lot of times, it's hard to know. One, a lot of companies don't have good performance metrics in place, especially for DevOps right now. To know if you're doing well, to know if you're doing poorly, to know if you deserve a raise or not. So that is a really good one to at least know that the company is thinking about how to do those things. So that's really good. All right, so let's go on to the next one. And we talked about a lot of this stuff already, but just the types of questions you would get on a phone screen: questions about background and desired future position, surface level questions about technical skills, and probing questions to test your soft skills. Again, people like to work with people that they can work with. There are a lot of, oops, sorry, light went off, and it is, maybe it won't come back on. All right, no problem. But maybe there are, for lack of a better term, there are asshole developers out there. And there are people who are amazing. They're amazingly talented in the technical aspects of things, but they're awful with their soft skills. And sometimes people can't work with that. Sometimes that's not a good fit. Some places that's a great thing. Some places it's not. And making sure, but maybe someone's too outgoing. Maybe someone has too much energy for a team and won't really fit in. So there will be questions to kind of test some of that stuff. Because again, as much as it sucks to have someone you can't communicate with, someone who is going to come in and kill the vibe of everyone because they're, they talk too much, or you have a team of people, a team of introverts or something like that. Those things are important. You don't want to create this group think, but you do want compatible teams. You do want compatible people, and they can be very different. Like the team I work on right now is probably the biggest group of large personalities, large completely different personalities that I've ever worked with, for sure. And we work really well together, and I think that's a testament to the hiring process at the company that I'm at now. But it's not always about making sure people are the same, but it is about making sure people can work together properly. And I don't know, it's a delicate balance there for sure. But next in the process, and it won't always be in this order. So I'm just giving you steps. I'm giving it to you in the steps that it'll likely happen, but it won't always be in this order. A lot of times, sometimes this take-home challenge comes before the phone screen. Sometimes this is a barrier to the phone screen. But it's possible that you'll have a take-home challenge. This is probably the most optional of the steps. This is not always a thing, but I've seen it a lot more lately, a whole lot more lately. So you go through you've prepared to get the interview, you've flooded the market, you've got a call back or an email back that says, hey, we'd like to have a phone screen with you, see if our everything aligns. You have the phone screen, things go pretty well. They say, cool, we'd love for you to move forward with this process. We're going to give you this take-home challenge. Usually the take-home challenge is to be done before an in-person interview. I personally haven't seen it be used. If you already had the phone screen, I haven't seen it be used yet to weed you out. Usually you do it and then it's a talking point during the in-person interview, but I guess it could also be used to say, hey, like, this is round one, like, you got to do this or you're out. But yes, they'll give you a take-home challenge. And these are some of the things to pay attention to when you get that take-home challenge. And that take-home challenge is usually some type of coding challenge. For DevOps, it's been pretty interesting. I've seen a move towards like actual infrastructure deployments. People will give you like AWS accounts and stuff nowadays and say, hey, here's a bunch of things, go set this stuff up, in the way that we want it. I think that'd be pretty interesting. I've seen Ansible stuff and Terraform stuff as well. So it's not always just, random coding algorithms and things like that, which you will get. It could be pretty much anything nowadays, but what do you want to take from this? One, you want to know the deadline. So make sure you know how long you have to do this thing. And that's important for a few reasons. One, you need to know you just need to know when it's due, period. But two, you need to know when it's due because you probably have a job, some kind of job, even if it's not in tech, and your time is valuable. It can be used doing a lot of things. So you need to know how much time you can do. Like, you need to be able to set aside some time to devote to this. So you need to know how long you have. And again, this gets harder and harder, the more strenuous your job is. I've seen people not apply for jobs because they got some kind of large take-home challenge that was going to take 10 hours. You need to know when it's due. You need to know how long you have so you can determine if it's something that you want to do and how much time you have to put into it. The second thing, people do not read these thoroughly. They try to trick you sometimes. And they'll put things in there very specifically to make sure you follow what you're supposed to do, and to make sure that you've paid attention to what is going on. So make sure whatever the challenge is, make sure you take your time and read it thoroughly so that you know exactly what you need to achieve. Third one, use your resources. This is one that people have asked me so many times about, and I'm like, it's a take-home test. When have you ever had a take-home test where you couldn't use your book? Integrity is everything, but I just assume, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but I assume if something is a take-home test, take-home exam, they meant for me to use my book, unless they explicitly say, don't use your book, don't use any resources. But they're there for you to use your resources. On the job, you'll have these resources. So people are okay with you, using these resources. Use the internet, use Stack Overflow, use your notes, use documentation to get to the root of the problem and to be able to solve it. It's a take-home test. Use your resources. Do not be afraid to do that, to watch videos, to do whatever you need to do to get this thing done. And the last thing is be thorough. This was an interesting one that I learned after reviewing a take-home challenge with a company, is that I wasn't thorough. I wasn't as thorough as I could have been. I did the challenge. I solved the challenge. It was a coding challenge. I think it was to I think I had to write I had to write like a temperature converter to take in either Celsius or Fahrenheit or Rankine or something. I didn't even know what that was at the time, and convert it into any of the other ones, depending on what you passed in. I did it in Golang, and I knew I knew it was likely that a lot of them hadn't used Golang before. So I had everything kind of in one file, and I did more than the bare minimum, but I wasn't super thorough. And they were like, hey, when we went through it, they liked it, but they were like, hey, whenever you do something like this, you should always make it production quality code. You should always, make sure it's you've done it to the best of your ability. I thought that was very interesting. I've heard that a few other times, that people are looking for that thoroughness for the take home challenges and making sure you give and show everything you got. Again, that's not always possible. You may not have enough time. It's interesting. They're asking you to do a couple of hours of work for free. So you if you want the job, if you really want the job, you got to put in the time. Unfortunately, there are companies who will pay you for this time. There are a lot that won't, but yes, you might see a take home challenge. Let's see. I heard about this instead of whiteboarding. Yeah, I agree. So I've done both whiteboarding interviews and take home challenges. I much prefer the take home challenges. I think most people do. It gives you a little more creativity, and it gives you something you can be proud of. And again, it removes the fear factor. It's incredibly difficult for anyone. I think there are plenty of engineers who are very, very strong, who've been crushed by technical interviews because, honestly, whatever happens. So not only may you not be good at like being around new people, and it may take you time to get up to speed with people, and you may get nervous, but everything that happens in that interview up until you start writing on the whiteboard affects how you feel about that whiteboard interview and how you're going to perform on it. And I think that's dangerous. Someone who's fully equipped to do the problem that you were going to give them when they walked in may no longer be equipped to do that problem halfway through the interview process after you've racked their brain with questions. So I really do like this method much more than the in-person whiteboarding as well. Tell some issues you faced in any DevOps project, how you resolved it. Yes, I faced tons of issues. The project that I'm on now, when we moved to so we were supposed to be doing some I'll do this really quick, but we're supposed to be doing a brand new, moving all the tools, moving the site to a brand new infrastructure, brand new architecture as well. And they had some pretty old servers running some pretty old versions of Linux. And when we started the project, because we were supposed to be doing all these new things, we started developing all these new things. And then we found out that we actually had to integrate with the old stuff. And so basically we had Dockerized everything. And we were like, cool, no big deal. Docker runs on Linux. We're running some great Linux hosts. We'll just keep building in Docker, and we'll do some fancy Nginx stuff to kind of route things where we need to route it to, and it'll be good. It'll integrate fine, and we'll have some old stuff running and some new stuff running. It'll all be good. We got straight into prod, staging the prod areas where these old systems were running, and realized that we could only get up to, I think at the time we were running like Docker like 1.10 or one. No, I think we were in the teens. I think we were like 1.16 or something like that. And the latest Docker that this kernel could get was like 1.6. And it was missing a lot of the major features that we needed, like a ton of the major features that we needed to like networking and all kinds of stuff that we were relying on wasn't there. And so we had to do a lot of manual rewrites of applications, a lot of changes, a lot of workarounds to get that to work within Docker, because it wasn't really feasible to run it outside of Docker, to be 100% honest. We did for a little bit because we were using Chef, but we solved it just by rewriting everything to work within the bounds of what Docker 1.6 provided us. And then everything was great once we moved outside of these old systems, and we're finally able to get out to AWS and move off of these old servers with old kernels. We were able to kind of fix that up. But that's one of the problems that we faced, and how we fixed it. We kind of brute forced that one and had to actually, re-architect a bit of the applications, re-architect how we were building them, to take into account some of these things, because we couldn't use, again, that internal Docker networking. There were a lot of little creature comforts early in Docker that were missing, that you got in between 1.5 or something like that and 1.10. So yeah, it was pretty tough. But I have stories for days about just problems that we've run into. You will too. The more you deal with infrastructure, you will run into major problems. How much time do you want to spend on it is important also. Absolutely. Be smart about how much time you want to spend on it. Especially if you're doing a lot of these, there's been times where I had 4 or 5 take-home challenges at once, and it can be really exhausting. And if you're spending the hit button, okay, if you're spending too much time doing 1 or 2 of them, you may not give and you may not be able to give enough time or energy to the other ones that you have. So just make sure you're using your time wisely. And it's okay to push back on companies and say, hey, I'm applying for a few other positions. I have take-home challenges for these. I got them first. Could I have an extension on the due date? Things like that. People. The whole thing is a conversation. It's generally not a hey, you do this because we said so, and if you don't, everything's off. Ask. Doesn't hurt to ask. See if you can have a little more time or something like that. Someone will give you a little bit of leeway, give you a bit of a break. So definitely do that if you need to. Yes, Chuck Norris is stopping the chainsaw with his hand. This was never actually meant for this slide. This was for something like 2 times ago, and it was for logging. Yes, he was cutting down a tree, and this is what came up when I typed in logging. And I just copied, I was just copying the slides, and it stayed here. I actually think he's on all the rest of the slides, so ignore that. Yep, on all of them. But after you get the take-home challenge, let's say you do well in the take-home challenge, or if like I said, sometimes this take-home challenge is for the main round. So it's usually for the in-person or the main round interview, the main round. So you may have any number of these depending on what company you're at. Most companies, a majority of the companies in the United States at least, have a single round. And by majority, I don't mean 99%. I mean 60% of companies have one round. After they do a phone screen, give you a take-home thing, they have one round interviews. There are a lot of places that'll do 2 rounds. Usually they'll give you the technical one first, make sure everything's good, and then they'll give you a second one that usually is, now you meet the team and see if you're cool and do more of the cultural one. But then you've got your Silicon Valley companies and the bigger companies who need, they need quality engineers who really know their stuff. And you may have 7 or 8 rounds of interviews, which is nuts to me. But yeah, main rounds. You might have any number of rounds. Oh no, did my camera just go off? My camera just went off. Don't worry about that. I will fix that. I got a new 4K camera and I was trying that out, but what we can do really fast is we can go to the Logitech because I still have the Logitech here. Oh no, there we go. Put you on the side. Let's fix it up here. Get you down in the corner. Now we'll move this to the bottom. You see the camera was too high. I probably should have turned it down from, it's on 4K. I probably should turn it to 1080p and it wouldn't overheat. Cool. Now I'm here. Good thing we have 2 cameras set up. Cool. So that was actually a pretty easy fix. I'm glad I know what to do there. Main rounds. So the main rounds can be either in person or remote, just like all the rest of them. Nowadays, you might have them either way. I appreciate being back. I miss you guys too. The short time I was out. This next one is important. For a different reason than you might think. Dress accordingly. Now, this is not to say that you need to be super dressed up. You can overdress, and I think that is something that's important. If you don't know what to wear, ask. So I would get a feel for the company, and I would almost always ask, hey, if you get the in-person interview and you got to be there in person, ask what to wear. I mean, it is weird when we interview people here at Fearless. I mean, our CEO walks around in a hoodie, jeans, and custom Air Maxes and Beats headphones almost every day. So it's weird. It's kind of weird when people come in with shirts and ties. It's a little jarring. And it's cool. Definitely don't hold that against anyone. But there are places I've talked to people at companies man, when people come in shirt and ties, it shows us that they don't know this industry. And that's that's a red flag right there. And some people think like that. Everyone doesn't think like that, but there are companies who do think like that, and vice versa. If you come in, with your jeans and t-shirt, because you're used to working at tech companies who are cool and hip and like things like that, and so that's what you wear. But people were expecting you to wear, khakis or slacks, and just make sure you dress do your best to find out what the company wants and dress accordingly. I think for technical positions, it's pretty safe to go middle of the road. I would say do things like some casual slacks and like casual pants and a polo or something. I don't know. I wouldn't go super dressy ever, to be honest. For most tech jobs, I wouldn't go super dressy. But hey, again, if you don't know what to wear, you should absolutely ask what to wear. Yeah, jeans and polo. Jeans and polo. Jeans and polo is usually safe. Try to make it regular jeans and not ripped jeans. I have a lot of ripped jeans. Like not skin showing ripped jeans, but I have a lot of like ripped jeans. So try to wear regular jeans and a polo if you're not sure. I think that's pretty safe. Dress one level up. Steez B, that's perfect. Dress one level up from work attire. I would recommend that. I would go, again, if they're saying come in jeans and a t-shirt, I would wear jeans and a polo, or something like that. I would go one level up just to be a little bit safe. But yeah, I would wear pants. I wouldn't show up in shorts. I wouldn't, but yeah, that's just me. Slack, suit jacket, and shirt. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would stay away from the suit jackets. Shirt and tie, I'm fine with the shirt and tie, but like a lot of places it does make you look kind of stuffy, for sure. But I would always go khakis. I do agree with that. Most of the time, even though I tell people like, hey, like if you're interviewing here, you can feel free to come in jeans, polo, jeans, shirt, whatever. But I will probably always wear khakis. I'll probably always wear khakis and polo, to be honest, just to be safe. Tie with no jacket's fine, but yeah, just get a feel for the company. You'll start to know, and again, just whoever sets up this interview with you, say, hey, what's the dress? What's the dress for this? Usually they'll say business casual or something like that, but whatever they tell you, go with it. But know what to wear. This one's big, and this is why I capitalized it. For the main rounds, know your resume. This is where they'll likely have your resume sitting right in front of them, and you need to know your resume. You need to know what's going on with it. You need to know what's on there, because they're going to pick things off of it. They're going to ask you questions about your experience. So make sure you know what's on there. Make sure there are no surprises. I understand resume padding. I get it. I get that if you watched a video on MySQL for 20 minutes, so you put it on there, and that's fine. You hopefully you can talk about it, but like if you said you did all this stuff with it, you said you set up some master and slave nodes and replication and stuff, like make sure you know what's on there. Even if you've never done it, make sure you know how to talk about it. That's very important. Whoa, where did I go? Okay. Number 4. It's okay to say I don't know. You will get asked questions that you don't know the answer to. So it's okay to say you don't know. Generally, when that happens, though, do your best to either divert and explain something that is adjacent or around that item, so you can kind of show your understanding of the entire concept of whatever you're talking about, or ask for information and say, hey, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know what it is, but maybe could you explain for me? Or good interviewers will when you run into something that you're not familiar with, they'll usually give you a little information about it, because sometimes there's things that like either maybe the terminology is just different from what you know, or it's something that you do know, but you never learned about this specifically, but you've kind of come across it and the things that you've done, and you may be able to start a new conversation out of that. But ask about it. Say, hey, did you mind telling me a little more about that? I've never heard of that, or or say I've heard of that, have never gotten to dive into that concept, or this is what I do know about it. I know it does this, but I've never dove any deeper than that, or dived, or I don't know what the past tense to use there is, but it's okay to say you don't know. It's completely okay to say you don't know, not a problem. But try to add more value after you say you don't know. And then after that, focus on what you do know. And we talked about this a little bit during the last panel. Focus on what you do know. To me, this is the number one thing that you can do in an interview to really increase your chances. If you focus on what you do know, you can steer the conversation. So generally you'll get asked about what's on your resume. You'll get an opportunity to kind of talk about things that you've done, and to really highlight some of those things. So make sure you highlight those things that you want them to ask questions about, because usually the next questions, they're going to be pulling from things that you said. And if you're able to talk about those things in a very knowledgeable way, those are things you want to focus on. And you can be talking about the cloud, and there's a lot of services in the cloud that they can ask you about, and you can start harping on the ones that you do know, and even if they ask you about some things that you don't know, you can always find ways to kind of steer it back to some of the things that you've done, and expound a little bit more on those things that you have done that you do know about. I think that one's really important. Like, I think everyone spends way too much time worrying about what they don't know and trying to, like, right before the interview, trying to pick up little tidbits from all these different things. No, make sure you shore up the knowledge of things that you absolutely know about, because it'll be a lot more easier to roll those things off your tongue than it will for something you have no idea about. And you can box yourself into, you can put yourself in a little box. Like, if I know these 2 things about this thing, and if they ask you about it and you spit those things off, it makes it kind of look like you know what you're talking about. And if they dive a little deeper, they'll realize that you have kind of surface level knowledge, and now you've kind of acted like you really knew about this thing, and it makes you look a little weird. So again, focus on the things that you do know. That's very important. And then remember, it's a conversation, not a question and answer session. Yes, it is a question and answer session, but the interview is a conversation, and a lot of people sit back and allow it to be a question and answer session. This is a time for you to get information. It's not just you answering their questions. It's also you extracting information from them, and it's you taking the opportunity to show off the things you know. You're showing off at this point. You're trying to show what it is that you can offer the company, and find out what they can offer you. So again, it's a conversation, and you should approach that accordingly. And don't just wait for questions, answer them, and sit there. You should be, during the process, don't wait till the end to start asking questions. Ask a question back, or if there's more input, if you want to provide input on something that they didn't quite ask, but that's related to the question, go ahead and throw that in again, because it's a conversation. And again, you can make that flow. You can make the conversation flow however you want it to flow. And that is very, very important for the main rounds. This mouse that I have, what's up, man? I have glass over here to my left. I don't usually have glass to my left, so now I have some visitors. I don't know if you guys remember Alex from the panel, but he's just coming by to say hi. Wait, let me hop back in the chat. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. HR people bring extra copy or 2. Yeah, yes, actually, Abyss, I would absolutely bring in some extra copies of your resume. Usually that helps, because there might be some extra people in the room who may want to have a copy of it. Cover up tattoos. I do not cover up my tattoos. I don't cover up my tattoos. The tech industry is one of those places. I don't want to tell anyone to not cover up their tattoos, because I think it all depends on where you are, and your level of experience. I like to think that I can use my skills and my knowledge and my experience to kind of overcome any preconceived thoughts about me. I also, it's a little bit of it's a little bit more personal to for that to me. I'm a big black guy, and so with tattoos, with dreads. So I do like to, I like to come as I am, to one, know that you're going to take me seriously. And I don't know, give it all to you up front. I don't want to, this is who I am. This is what you're going to get. So I have a bunch of tattoos. I have tattoos everywhere. I have tattoos up here. So I don't cover them up. And usually it's not a problem. I work with people of all races who have tattoos, who have forearm tattoos, everything. So generally it's not a problem in the tech industry, but again, where you are definitely matters. So I think you're mostly fine. If you're on the coast, you're probably good. Maybe middle of the country, maybe not so much. But I don't know. I'm not from everywhere. So, I do not cover up my tattoos. That's a good question though. If they're offensive, definitely cover them up. Same thing with social media. Hide your offensive social media posts. People are looking at social media a lot. You should definitely clean up your social as well. Rushing your interview and forget to print. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing if you forget to print. I don't think it's detrimental if you don't bring copies of your resume or forget to print. I think it only it helps, but I don't think it's detrimental at all. A lot of people don't even have a printer anymore. Printers are not easy to come by nowadays, to be honest. We're in a digital age. You Usually it's not a big issue, but it can help. Print, you savage. Exactly. Like I have a printer, we have a printer, and we just started using it again because we didn't have ink for like years. So the printer was fine, we just didn't get ink for like years, so we just got ink. So we are using that now. Let's see. At full sleeves, chest, all of his neck. Yeah, that like you. This is, I think tech is really is right now one of the most accepting industries of. It's like come as you are. Like, hey, as long as you have the skills, as long as you can do the work, as long as you're not an asshole, like come work with us. To be honest, so usually you can come as you are. Cool. All right, and then what do we just go over? Let's click back in. We talked about that, and then the types of questions you're going to get. So deeper dives into your resume for this. They're going to dive more specifically into each position usually. And again, ask you very, like, if you say, hey, like I was a part of a large scale migration from bare metal to the cloud. And they're going to ask you like, oh, how did that go? Like, tell me more about that. Like, you know, what cloud did you go to? What kind of applications did you transfer? What were some of the pain points that you hit? So they're going to dive deeper into things that you have on your resume. Then there's going to be more specific questions about technical concepts. So these tools that you say that you've used, how have you used them? What did you like about them? What didn't you like? All questions to make sure that you actually have used the tools that you said you did, and to see if you have, you know, that type of analytical thinking that allows you to be able to give them confidence that you've used these tools, but also like tool choice, things like that. So they're going to ask very specific things about these tools and make sure that you've used these tools. Specific questions about on-the-job experience. I put on-the-job in quotes, but these are both technical and non-technical things. Again, these are specific questions. Again, just like the question I was just talking about the large-scale migration, things like that. They want to know that you've done the things that you said you've done. You can put a bunch of tools on there. You can put a bunch of these concepts on your resume, but I think that employers like to have a conversation just to like, they don't know the job that you came from. Like, they don't know what that company does. They don't know what their infrastructure looks like. They don't know what their development team looks like. They don't know what that looks like. But they want you to be able to talk about it fluently and proudly, hopefully proudly. But they want you to be able to speak about it. So they know that you've done these things, that you participated in a development process, really. So there's gonna be a lot of questions about that, just to kind of make sure you've done what you said you've done. Again, that's why I said they're both technical and non-technical, because you'll get questions about both. And then the last thing, they'll ask some behavioral and cultural questions. You know, how you deal with conflict, and, you know, tell me about a time when someone, you know, made you angry and things like that. But also like decision-making questions and things like that, to just see how you kind of, I don't want to call it temperament, because that, I don't know, that seems a little weird to me, but it's kind of a temperamental questions, and making sure you're a quality a workmate employee are the kinds of questions that they're going to ask. All right, so we talked about this. Everything we talked about so far is the general technical interview process. These are things we're going to run into, the types of questions that we're going to get to, but how does the DevOps process usually work? What are you going to kind of run across? And I did these slides here very high level, because again, I'm going to pull up the site really quick, and I'm going to send it out to all of you. But there's a lot of questions you might get. They fall into a lot of categories, because DevOps spans a lot of categories, and we're going to run through those. So experience primers. So these are the questions that we talked about before. So let's talk about some specific questions you might get in experience primers. And these are going to generally be the first sets of questions that you're going to get. And actually, let's see here. Oh, no, I did have it here. Let me send this to you here. And if you want to check this out, I think this is a great resource for us checking out some interview questions. As I was going through, it's well broken down. There's a variety of questions, but it gives you a good span of things to talk about, and it covers like all the same stuff that we did inside of our inside of the boot camp. So this is a really good thing here. But what kind of questions are you going to get as a part of where were we? As a part of the experience primers. These are the things that are like, what have you done in the past? I want to tell us about what you've done. So how do you answer a question like that? You answer a question like that by, telling them what you've done in the past, but try to do it in a way that you can harp on the things that, like, don't try to remember the bullet points of the random stuff you just put on your resume to help it get found by these, by the job catchers and things like that, and found by these systems. Talk about the things that you've done. So, hey, I worked at this company and this is what they did. They were a company that sold DVDs, and my job there was to make sure that the site was always up and available for anyone who needed a DVD to be able to receive those DVDs. And I needed to make sure the site was reliable and great, and I did that using these things. We use we had bare metal servers, and we used Chef to configure those servers and to make sure we had consistent configuration. And I helped set up pipelines for our engineers to push our Ruby application through. And I don't know, just talk about those things, but drop the buzzwords as much as you can. But talk about the technology that you use. Talk about your experience there. Go in depth about what you've done in the past. And again, try to focus on the things that you've actually done, and try to talk it up as much as possible. And you also might get something in here like, what is DevOps mean to you? This is a very common one. Like, the first thing I said when we started talking about DevOps was, you're going to get different definitions everywhere you go. Different companies are going to need different things out of DevOps engineers. But a common one you'll get, and this is for the experience primer, is, what does DevOps mean to you? Or what's your definition of DevOps? And you should be able to, if you're going for a DevOps engineering position, that's what we're talking about right now, you should be able to define that for whoever's asking. I don't think there's no right answer for this, but being able to do it, quickly and kind of concisely is, I think, very important. And I think it shows a lot. I think a question like this early on can almost, not want to make or break you, but really set the tone for the rest of the interview. Just being able to say, hey, to me, very quickly to say, hey, to me, all DevOps is really the removing of the wall between development and operations, to ensure that we deliver software faster. Great answer. That's great. Even if you say, hey, I actually don't believe in DevOps. I do the tasks that DevOps says do, but although it says, remove those silos, I don't think you can remove those silos because of this and this and this. Whatever your answer may be able to answer that question. That is a very common one that I think you'll get asked, that I've been asked personally by a lot of companies, right up front. Just what does it mean to you? What is DevOps to you, to kind of see if we're on the same playing field. So these are going to be your experience primers. These are going to be the things that kind of usually kick off the conversation, and give the person you're speaking to a little more insight on what you've done and what kind of DevOps engineer you are. We talked about all the different types of, we talked about systems administration and DevOps and site reliability engineering and systems engineering, kind of all falling in this weird little bucket. And there's a lot of overlap in there, and companies needing really bits and pieces of all of them, but they kind of just say DevOps engineers because that's the new hotness to say. Being able to say that and do that shows what kind of DevOps engineer you are. If you're more of an ops person, if you're more dev, if you lean more to the dev side of things, if you're really just your sysadmin who knows the cloud, anything like that, it shows them what you've done and who you kind of are coming out of there. The next thing you're going to get behavioral and the soft skills questions. And these are all things that we've already talked about, but just want to go over some specifics of those things and what you might want to talk about. Again, these are going to be the questions like, hey, how do you deal with conflict? Tell me about a time when, you had a major technical problem, and how did you handle that? How did you manage that major technical problem? And again, sometimes those are tough. You should think about these. You should think about these things. A lot of people think, again, about the technical stuff first. You should think about times, keep in mind times that were tough. I may say, hey, yeah, one time I was working at and this is a true story, I'm working at a video game company, and we were doing manual maintenance at night. And, this is the peak time for people in the US to be playing their video games. And I also be doing maintenance on the European servers. And to do that maintenance, I needed to lock the European servers and kick everyone out. But I accidentally did it on the American side of things. I kicked out all the American players at peak play time, and they may ask, "Oh, that's crazy. Did you get in trouble for that?" And say, "Hey, no, I did my best to keep my cool. I let whoever know about the situation, let them know what went wrong, and what I did to rectify it, and start the process of rectifying the situation, and just talk about things like that. Just let them know that you've faced some kind of tough skill or tough challenge, and then dive further. And I may talk about after that. I might say, hey, yeah, and through that process, even though I did make that mistake, it just further taught us that we are not implementing the right pieces of the DevOps methodology. There's no reason that anyone should have been doing that piece of the process manually, and we need to put some focus around automating that. So we did, and this is how we did that. And again, that can move you into bigger conversations, some things that you may be better at answering. But then again, it also might just be, hey, the how do you deal with conflict with a coworker question comes up a lot. I hate the multiple choice ones. You'll have people ask like, hey, if a coworker, if you saw them steal a lunch off of someone's desk, would you A, go talk to them person to person? Would you B, tell the coworker they stole from that they stole their lunch? Or C, would you go to upper management? I hate those because I don't think those aren't, I really feel like those aren't realistic or good questions to ask, because I think every situation is different. I think there's situations where you should go to management. I think there's situations where it's ridiculous to go to management and you should talk to that person directly. I think there's situations that maybe you should just let slide because of various reasons. Maybe there was a big buildup and now this is, I don't know, there's that game, that the behavioral game, is a tough one, but being able to again just answer what you believe that you would do in a certain situation is important, and you will get those things, and hopefully you can go out and answer those questions. I think they're really dumb sometimes, but yeah, the companies want to know that you might have their back if someone decides to steal all their stuff, but yeah. Then you get some tooling questions. You get a lot of tooling questions in DevOps. At least in my experience, you get a lot of tooling questions. You get a lot of deeper dives about specific tools. Like almost always, if the company uses a configuration management tool, they'll ask you about the configuration management tools that you've used, and they'll almost always ask you like, hey, why did you? Like, how do you like Chef in comparison to Ansible? Like, why did you guys choose Chef in comparison to Ansible? Or why did you choose SaltStack? And these are tooling questions, and they're also those technical decision-making questions. Like, hey, I want to know if like, were you just like doing the things, or were you part of were you like, did you understand why you were doing things, or were you just doing them because that's what they told you to do? And being able to, it may make you look really good if you can say, hey, we use this tool over this tool because it provided this type of functionality, which allowed us to do these things better. Or as simple as, hey, we chose this tool because the people, when we were deciding to adopt a tool, half of the team already had experience with this tool, and the time to ramp up will be much faster. These are all very reasonable answers to questions. Being able to answer in one of those ways is great. Even if you don't know the answer, being able to throw one of those answers behind it helps a lot. And makes you, again, it all makes you sound familiar with what you've been doing. And that's the goal here. Like, I harped on the concepts. I harped on memorizing the concepts of the things that we were going over rather than the individual tools. And I think these tooling questions will be along that line. It's like, hey, there's a million tools out here. Like, they'll do different things. Like, but like, I want to make sure you understand what the problems that the tools solve, and like, I want you to show me that you know what these tools do inside of the DevOps pipeline. So you'll get a lot of these tooling questions. You might also get some things like some common tooling questions. I'll get is Docker containers. People are building containers. People almost always ask me the difference, if I know the difference between a Docker container and a virtual machine. And that's an interesting one that you might get a lot. And I'm actually pretty sure that's one of the first ones in the thing that I sent you. But yeah, being able to speak about things like that, again, time consuming to like it. it's time consuming to know, I think, to like know these things, like especially when you're just trying to pick up tools. It's kind of tough to start to learn the whys and the differences, because now I got to learn two tools. Honestly, to really know the difference, I got to kind of learn two different tools. I got to understand VMs and I got to understand Docker now. So that does, these questions. These questions you may not be able to answer super well if you're just starting out. But again, it's okay to say you don't know, but it's also okay to say, hey, I don't know how a container differs from a virtual machine, but I do know what a container is. And let me tell you now what a container is. And let me show you the information that I know about containers. And I may forget about that question completely after you dive into what you know about containers. And I say, oh, great, this person, yeah, they know Docker. They understand Docker. They understand what containers are. And I might start asking you more Docker questions because that's the thing that you know. But again, it's a conversation, so you can answer in that way. Even if it's, you can pick the things out of that question that you do know, and use that information to kind of shine on that front. So it's okay to do that, but it's also okay to say, hey, I'm not sure about this. I don't know what this is 100%. Maybe I'll take a shot at it. I do think that's good sometimes. Like if you think you've got enough there to go off of it, I think it's a good idea to say, hey, like, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I do know some stuff about Docker, and some stuff about VMs. This is why I think they're different. And let me know where I'm missing the mark here, and shoot that out there, because I do think, for me at least, and in my experience, having the person know that you're taking a shot rather than you making them think like presenting the information as fact, is two different things, and how you approach that is two different things, and it can have a completely different outcome. So just something to think about when you are doing that. If there are any other hiring managers on here, let me know what you think about that. It is annoying when people do it too much. Like, I'm not too sure about that, but let me try this. I think that's a little bit of a cop out. But if the question is, borderline, and you don't want to sound like you're BSing someone who knows their stuff, I think it's okay to say, hey, I know some stuff about these things, and I'm not 100% sure there's the right answer, but let me take a stab at it. And if I get it wrong, ask for feedback. Say, hey, do you mind telling me more about what the difference is between these two things? And they'll usually share that with you. You can ask more questions out of that make it known that you kind of understand these topics a little bit better. And then we'll get, I just want to get through these, and then I'll pretty much be hopping straight in the chat and staying in the chat as we go over questions. But I just want to get through these top level things. Process questions. So this can be all over the place. People will ask about process pretty often. Sometimes they'll ask about the development process. They'll ask, hey, have you ever been a part of an agile team? Because a lot of DevOps projects are agile Scrum, or Kanban or something like that. So they might ask, hey, like, just tell me about how a project was run. They might ask you process questions about your development process, and they might say, hey, like, what was your team's branching strategy like for Git? Like, was it trunk based? Were you doing release branches? What was that process like? Just to ensure that you understand, again, the development process and moving code through those pipelines. They might ask you things about, like, all right, when a developer needed to push code out to an environment, how did you handle developer branches or developer environments, or like how was that handled? And maybe what is the workflow that was set up in your organization to get code to prod? Things like that are important. And again, these process questions, sometimes they're masked, and it might seem like a technical question, but usually what they want out of this is, again, to make sure you understand the process of the software development life cycle and how code moves through a pipeline, whatever that pipeline may be, to a state where people can see it, use it, and consume it. And so there will be questions about process and how you go about setting things up, especially in DevOps. Usually these processes lie in the CI pipeline area. Again, and just methodologies on how to get code from here to here, and how you would do it, or how it was done, and people want you to be able to talk about these things knowledgeably for process. I think this is the last one. Yeah, and the last one is architectural questions. Although DevOps is not inherently architecture related. Well, it is because it's ops, but it's part ops, but it has become it. The spirit of DevOps isn't purely architecture related, but the reality of DevOps is almost purely architecture related. And this is web architecture. This is not the application architecture, not how our APIs are set up, but how how our infrastructure architecture is set up. And so you will get a lot of architecture questions, a lot of sysadmin architectural questions, like, hey, if they're usually open-ended, so you'll get the architecture questions about like specific cloud providers, and hey, tell me more about EC2 and what you guys did with that, and have you ever implemented auto scaling policies, and how did you do that? Did you do that through target tracking or step scaling? Like, how did you do things like that? And so they might go into stuff like that, but it might be higher level open-ended questions, like scenario based, like, hey, what if I was a product owner and I told you, we had this CMS that 30,000 people were going to be using, and we needed it to be available through, across the country, but just across the US. And maybe they'll say, we also, security is a factor, is a concern, and we need this and this and this. And this is the kind of database it's running. Kind of walk me through your setup of that. And again, these questions would require that you have some experience and that you've done this stuff before. These are the questions that are the real weed out, make or break things, because this allows you, there's no right answer to these. And this allows you purely to have an in-depth technical conversation without having a shared understanding of what you already know. So like it allows the conversation to flow in many different directions all at once. And so these questions can be really, really interesting. And questions like this is where I've seen people with 20 years of experience, I've seen them shine up until here and then completely break down because they were button pushers, and they knew the tools, they knew the tools, but they didn't really know why they were doing what they were doing, and they didn't have a good understanding of the big picture. And so, yeah, these architectural questions are important, and these are the ones that take the most learning, the most experience to answer, and they're the hardest. They're the most intimidating questions when you're new, you're hopping into these interview process. I think these are the questions that people are afraid of and they trip up on the most, and we're going to go over some of those. But those are the specific DevOps things, and we're about to hop into this repo, and we're going to look at these, and I think it's broken down very much to align with all of these things here. So I know there's a lot of questions asked. I saw the chat moving a lot, but I want to get through that. I'm not going to go up too far and see what questions anyone has. Unique users. Communicating some of the DevOps interview questions here for Lynn's questions. Oh, okay. That's just another link for Lynn's questions. Just spitballing you. Yeah, that differentiation is important. If you're spitballing versus if you're taking a stab at something, I think it's okay to take stabs. But yeah, it gets pretty tough. Be a good lesson, just a primer on Agile and Scrum. Oh, so Abyss, that's great. Great that you said that. Maybe a good lesson, 100%. That is actually the next thing that we're doing. On Monday, I'm doing a retro about the last 12 weeks. We're going to be doing a retro about the last 12 weeks. And I'll be going over what the retro process is in the Agile Scrum, methodologies. But after that, probably the next week, probably that Monday and Wednesday, it'll be all Agile Scrum. And that might even be a 2-weeker just to be able to dive all the way into Agile Scrum, just because that is it's a very hot topic for like right now. The industry, a lot of people are doing that so much, but that is a good one. Solutions architects. Cool. All right, before we hop into, how would you define a deck of cards, hardest opener? Programming focus. How would you define a deck of cards? I've never gotten that one. That sounds like a tough one. I don't even know how I would I would learn that. But cool. So the most important thing to learn about about the interview process, at least in my experience, is one, a very important thing to do is to go on lots of interviews. It's scary, it's time consuming, or at the very least, do a lot of phone screens. Um, you, yeah, there was a period of time where like, I made the jump from my first job to my second job, and then when I make the jump from my second job to my third job, during that time, I had interviewed at a couple places, and I got a bunch of I got a bunch of interviews all at once, and some of them were really scary. I did terrible in some of them, but then because I had flooded the market, I started getting a lot more. I got callbacks late. I had already accepted the job, but I was getting a lot of callbacks still. Like, hey, you're interested, and I would just go into interviews anyway, just to kind of see, what was out there, what was happening. Especially because I had done so bad in some of the interviews that I did before. I wanted to see like what people were asking for, like what it was that I didn't know that I needed to go, get caught up on. And through that process, you learn how to explain what you know. That is the hardest part about interviewing. How do you prove to someone that you know what you know? And you don't get good at that until you start talking to people about it. You don't like, the only way to do it is not just to go on interviews. You can absolutely find someone to talk to about it, but it needs to be someone who already knows it, so that they can either call you on your BS or so they can ask you questions pertaining to it, so they can dig a little bit deeper. But actively practice speaking about the things that you know. That is the number one thing to do, because it's very hard. And then after that, the next thing, like, I guess directly related to the interview process, is like getting comfortable with like allowing your personality to show. I know for a fact that people have made me offers based almost solely on the rapport that we ended up having with each other by the end of the interview. Without my technical skill, they got to a point where it's like, all right, his technical skills are fine. We were just looking for someone who could kind of do this stuff. But I really like this guy, and that is why we're going to extend him an offer. That's an important piece of it. I mean, you can always say like, hey, it's not fair or something like, but people are people, and that is absolutely a basis on which people use to decide who they want working with them, who they want working at their company. So finding a way to let the things shine about you come through. It takes time to do that. It takes practice, letting yourself out a little bit more, because I definitely used to go into interviews, and it would be I would be really stiff, and then they would ask me a question. I would say, yep, I've used Docker before once, and I would leave it at that. And I wouldn't say anything extra. I wouldn't add any additional information. I wouldn't add any information about myself. I wouldn't let any of my personality shine through. So make sure you find a way to do that. Everyone thinks that a lot of people think that they don't have a lot to offer in that department. You will be surprised. Everyone's different, and everyone has their little quirks that people like or don't like, but let those things shine, because you want to make sure that when you do work there, you start letting those things through. The people there aren't going to hate you, and that you're not going to hate them. So that's another thing. Learn how to talk about what you know. Let your personality shine through. Yeah, that's all the major. That's all the major stuff for interviewing. Again, it's an art. Interviewing absolutely is an art. Interviewing is a skill in itself. I know a few people who are just amazing interviewers and know how to highlight themselves, know how to charm, and they were able to get jobs above their punching well above their weight, because they can do those things because of the art of interviewing. And I know people who have had immense skill and have had trouble getting positions that match their qualifications, because they couldn't crack this piece of the puzzle. And this stuff here is just as important as the technical skills in which you've picked up over time. So make sure you're including interviewing and interviewing skills as a part of your learning process. Like, include these things, because I would almost say this is more important. Like, if you can high level talk about the things that we've done, like if you can just explain CI/CD to me and like explain like what it is high level, even if you've never implemented a pipeline, and talk to me a little bit about cloud providers or something like that. Like, again, every job doesn't need to be a level 10 DevOps engineer. We need someone who understands the cloud, who can just make sure our servers stay up, so that we can keep making money. There's levels to all of it, and I think this part is so important. But let's just jump around on some of these interview questions, and I'll try to answer them in the way that I would answer them. And there will be 1000% be things on here that I have no idea how to answer. And I'll just give you how I would do them. I would love to hear from people in the chat, like kind of the ways you would answer some of these things. But it's good to see here in this repo, and I'll paste it again in case anyone missed it above. And I should have made it a chat command. But there's 503 questions here, and you can add to them. So as you go on interviews, you can add to this. And again, this is something great to put on your resume. You add to this, add your questions to this, and now you've contributed to an open source project. And you can put that on your resume. I've contributed to this. So we can see here all of these things fall into things that we've talked about. General DevOps, so that's everything we've learned. Jenkins, it's the CI/CD stuff that we learned about. It's going to fall into here, but it's probably going to be Jenkins specific. Git, we talked a little bit about Git. We should talk more about Git. That is something that I'm going to expand upon the next time we do this bootcamp. Ansible, we talked about configuration management tools. And are there any other ones in here? Cloud providers, you can see Google Cloud, AWS, Cloud here. I saw Azure somewhere, I thought. But Terraform, went over Linux, and we did Linux and networking at the same time. We did Docker. We didn't talk about SQL. We did not talk about SQL. We talked about database stuff a bit, but we didn't talk about database stuff. Prometheus, that's the monitoring section, and we did some Kubernetes. But you can see here, we covered what's in this repo. We covered most of this stuff here. And so that shows you the breadth of the things that you might need to go through. But let's go into these beginner DevOps questions. And again, the first one is going to be, what is DevOps? And so there's an answer here, but being able to answer, there are many good answers to this question. And again, the way I would, honestly, if I was asked what DevOps is, I would say that, DevOps, I do think that DevOps is the methodology. It's the methodology that's enabled by tooling to be able to break down silos between development operations, break down that process to help developers develop as fast as they want to. And that would be a very simple, and I would be able to expand upon that if they wanted me to, but that is kind of how I would throw that out there. And then you'll get questions. You get a lot of questions like this, and these were in the section I was talking about. Again, the section of experience primers. Hey, what do you know about DevOps? You want to be a DevOps engineer for our company? What do you know about DevOps? What are the benefits of DevOps? What can it help us achieve? And again, that would be things like, hey, it would enable you to have to be able to deliver code faster with collaboration. And this is the first thing that I said here. You can really say anything in here, to be 100% honest. Any benefits you can throw in here, and you can dive into it if you'd like. If not, that's cool too. But you can throw a lot of stuff in here. You don't need to memorize the answers to this. Conceptually, if you understand the goal of DevOps and you understand what void it's supposed to fill, what purpose it's supposed to serve, then you should be able to, if you genuinely understand that, then you should be able to give some type of answer for the benefits of DevOps. And man, this is all high level of the things that we learned. What's continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. See, so many people ask me why I separated the two CDs. Most places you go, most people you talk to, you'll see CI/CD, and I think it's very important to separate those things because you will get questions like this. What's the difference between continuous delivery and what's continuous deployment? I think those things are very, very important. But these are the kinds of questions you will get. Anti-patterns of DevOps. I've heard that asked a few times. We'll go over some of these. Let me see. I just want to see how many questions they have per section. All right, so these are great. These are great general DevOps questions. I actually really, really like these things. This is a really good comprehensive list of beginner ones. What systems and tools are you using for the following? So this is perfect. This is again something to show you the concepts. Tools are great, but in the CI/CD process, what problem to solve. But like we that's why I covered each of the tools while we were in there. I said, hey, you don't just have, even though we use Circle CI, you don't just have Circle CI. You have Jenkins, and you have Travis CI, and you have Team City. You got all these different things. I think it is important to know what tools are available to solve different problems. Infrastructure provisioning, knowing that for infrastructure provisioning, hey, I know that you can use tools like CloudFormation or Terraform to do that. I don't know what Azure's tool is called, but yeah, I know I can use infrastructure or Terraform. I can actually use things in Chef and Ansible to provision, but generally provisioning infrastructure, usually if you could say CloudFormation or Terraform, you're good to go. Configuration management, we talked about those tools. We talked about Chef and Puppet and Ansible and SaltStack for that. Monitoring and alerting, people have added things in here. So you see here, this is a good opportunity for you. If you're looking for things to put in your resume, go ahead and watch a video on YouTube about, maybe I'll find one for you guys, about how to contribute to open source projects, just so you can understand the Git flow for this. But you can see here, people have already added in answers for this, but they haven't added anything for the things that I just said. And I just gave you all the answers for the top three, but they've done this down here. Datadog, that's what we were going to use for monitoring and alerting. If you want, you can go ahead and add what we actually used, which was New Relic. But logging, we talked about a lot of the stuff here. We talked about, actually, we probably should have talked about this a little more. Actually, we didn't talk about any of this. But we could have talked about a little bit of this. We could throw in some other log things that we talked about. But yeah, you can go in and you can add these things. But questions like this show your breadth of knowledge and tools in the industry for this stuff. When do we get into advanced? This is interesting. This to me explains stateless versus stateful. These are the questions about DevOps that kind of show your knowledge of applications as well. And it's always interesting to how many of these you get. And I think that questions like this, if you get a lot of questions that fall into the dev space, note that, because that might be a position where you do a lot of heavy development, or you're more ingrained into the development process. And that might be important. That might be tough for you, or that might be right up your alley. So if you're a DevOps engineer who comes from the dev side of things, and you're like, hey, I want to be a part of that process. I want to be setting up these pipelines. I want to know how the application works. I want to be ingrained in all that. And if they're only asking you cloud questions, that might be a red flag as well. But yeah, this is a good set. SRE questions. So you can see here, this is supposed to be DevOps questions, I believe, DevOps interview questions. And you can see here we have SRE questions ingrained in here. And again, I told you there's a lot of overlap between these things. And yeah, you'll get these. You will get these. These aren't, I don't think they're super common, but and I also don't know if anyone was really fault you for not knowing these. There's an interesting video if you Google DevOps versus SRE. There's a Google actually has a whole video about this, since they SREing was kind of born out of Google. So they have a very interesting video on the difference between these things. And again, when you do find out that information, put it in here. Submit a PR. Fork this. Submit a PR and see if you can contribute to this. And again, that's something you can put on your resume that's not super technical. You've contributed now to an open source project, and I'm definitely going to contribute to this. Absolutely going to contribute to this. But yeah, there's some air budget stuff here. But let's take a look at some of these advanced questions. So, how do you measure your CI/CD quality? Are there any metrics that you're using for measuring the quality? And I just grabbed that one. What does an answer for this look like? There's a lot of things you could say for this. CI/CD quality would maybe be maybe your bug or error rate. Your CI process generally is you usually want to be able to hang on to that for your testing purposes, for your having automated testing, and ensuring, being kind of a first line of defense to make sure that you're not introducing any, breaking changes and things like that. Your builds should break if there are problems. So you can do things like bug rates, things like that to find out how much you're actually putting out in production, how many bugs are making it to production. you can use build times actually to measure CI/CD quality as well. Yeah, there are a bunch of things you can use to ensure that your pipeline is operating efficiently. And again, those key performance metrics, those KPIs for the CI pipeline are really set by the organization and their needs. So it's important to note that you can't just slap numbers onto these things and say, all right, our build times need to be less than this and we're good to go, or that if we're not getting less than 5 bugs into production, then no, this is a big problem. Every code base, every project is going to have different numbers, and generally you need to use them as a baseline. You probably need to gather some baseline and be able to measure against that to improve things. But those are just some of the things that you can use. What is configuration drift, and what problem is it causing? So configuration drift is when you have multiple servers and that are intended to have the same configuration, and that configuration gets out of whack for a number of reasons. Configuration on any number of servers is different from what it's supposed to be. What problems it causing? It can cause all kinds of problems. I forgot the name of the story. There's a very famous story about some like Castle Rock or some company that lost like all this money in in like a few hours or a few minutes or something like that, because one of their 12 servers was like somebody fat finger something because they were going in and setting things up manually. Again, that's one of the ways that it can happen. Configuration drift can happen if you are managing servers manually and you do not consistently put in the same information on all of them. That's one way. If you have applications that are modifying things, configuration on servers, that's another way. But yeah, the problems that it causes is it causes inconsistent operation of an application. So if I have 6 servers that are serving you data, that are doing processing, and one server, is set improperly, once data reaches that server, it may give us an output that is undesirable, and that could cost us money, that could cause us downtime, that could cause people not to get the information that they need. So yeah, those are some of the general DevOps questions that you'll get. And then, so something like this configuration drift and what problems it's causing, you talk about that. But then you can hop in, if you want to show how much you can say, hey, but that's why, to remedy configuration drift, I would use a tool like Chef or Puppet, some kind of configuration management tool, to make sure a server is as intended, is configured as intended, and that it keeps it that way. So Chef, Puppet, Ansible, they can be run on intervals to make sure that, servers stay in line. So that is, you could talk about how you would solve that problem once you explain what it is. And that can, again, you can use that as a segue to talk about things that you do know. If that's the only thing if like all I know is Chef or Ansible, like maybe that's the question I was waiting for, and now I can really dive into, I can use that to kind of segue into the things that I really, really wanted to dive into. Let's see. That is just a TCP IP question. No, which question was just a TCP IP question? I'm not sure. I don't think we had any of them up here. Oh, the stateless versus stateful? No, that's that has more to do about the persistence of data. Yeah, like Kubernetes and like Docker, they're ensuring the state of a system, the state of a session. It needs to be handled outside of the application itself, and that's what makes something stateless. So that basically the configuration, the state of it can exist and live outside of the application. So the application can be destroyed, but that state can be handled. If we're spinning up new containers or something like that, it can be picked up. So that's more of an application question rather than TCP/IP. Oh, okay. Yeah. So in DevOps, they're usually talking about stateful versus stateless applications. Yeah. Along those lines. DevOps engineer, do you all work in areas like configuration management? So that, yes, Samo, that'll depend on the job. I know DevOps engineers who only focus on the CI pipeline. That's all they do. And I know some that pretty much just manage the production infrastructure. So they're more like SREs and release engineers in that sense. But yeah, I work kind of across the board. We don't really do any configuration management anymore because we actually manage our configuration via images, so we don't really do any configuration management. But yeah, we use things like Terraform and Docker and Circle CI, so Jenkins or something like that. We focus on most of those tools, and you'll generally be using some subset of those tools. Maybe not all of them, but you'll definitely be doing with something like across the board. What's your team structure, team size, team distribution? How do you coordinate with your team members in case of dependencies? That's a great question. My team is not anymore. I was the only DevOps engineer on the team, but I'm the DevOps engineer. I'm the technical lead and DevOps engineer. And you guys met Candace last stream. She's on my team as well, so she's a DevOps engineer. We have 3 software devs on my particular team. One QA engineer, one test engineer, one Scrum Master, and we had a designer on our team as well. But now we kind of have ad hoc designers. We also have another developer with a client that we work with. And so team size is what, like 8 or 9 people. We work generally in the same building. We actually work at a table. Very interesting. Our team is a little special. We had all our own desks and we were working together in the middle a lot. So we got rid of our desks and we actually work at a giant table in the middle of the room, which is kind of nice. Pretty interesting. First time I've ever worked like that. Coordinate with the team members. So we because we're at that table, we're working in a very collaborative manner. We have this giant TV up to the left, and we kind of just throw stuff up there, with Apple TV or Google Chromecast, and we'll throw stuff up and we'll look over code and we'll work with each other. And we use Slack and Zoom to do, we work remotely sometimes as well. So we use Slack or Zoom to kind of manage that. So it doesn't really matter where anyone's working. And that's how we kind of manage dependencies. Dependency management does get tough though, with a team of this size. And by this size, I mean only 8 people. Because when there's only 8 people, there are generally specialists on the team, and so when one person's out, that becomes a problem. So you kind of got to talk about those things beforehand. But that's generally how my team works. But teams of larger sizes, the dependency management isn't quite as bad because usually there's a lot more overlap in knowledge and experience. But yeah, that's I've worked on teams that are much larger. I've worked on teams of 40 engineers and things like that. But yeah, just on a team of like 8 to 10 engineers, given the day. Humble Bundle. Yeah, Humble Bundle's dope. Actually, I'm gonna check this out. OS2 I use primarily. That is a very interesting question. I do not have a primary operating system. I don't consider myself to. So my desktop, and I'll show you my desktop here is running Windows. I'm running a VM here, but my work laptop actually runs. I run purely Linux. So my laptop has Linux installed, 100%, no dual booting. Like I run Linux. I use Pop OS. That's what you're looking at right now. You're looking at a VM that's running Pop OS, which is basically Ubuntu inside of it. So I use that. I use Linux when I'm doing any coding. I'm doing anything tech related. I'm generally inside of Linux. And when I'm gaming and I'm doing anything content creation focused, so video editing, social media stuff, messing around with Photoshop, setting up stuff, I'm using Windows for that just because those apps work better in Windows. I also have, I had a MacBook that I used for things as well, but right now I switch between, if I'm working, I'm using Linux. If I'm doing anything else, I'm using Windows for right now. What is the build trigger? How many builds do you do daily? Great question. So build trigger can be one of many things, but generally a build trigger is a push to GitHub. So, and actually I can show you real time. We've done this before. If I want to make an update to Yeah, I can't show you real time because everything's dying right now. A build trigger is basically just an action that causes a build to kick off. So it's pretty simple. It's an event based thing. So right now, if I push a commit to my master branch, my build will get kicked off. And so that's whatever trigger is a build is a build trigger, and generally that's some kind of change to the code base. Almost all, like 90% of the time, a change to the code base is what triggers a build. And how many builds do I do daily? The team does a lot of builds daily. I mean, probably depending on what we're working on, I'd probably say everyone's building 10 to 20 times a day, and then between 5 or 6 devs building a day. Just for our team, it's probably hundreds of builds a day, most like probably close to 100 builds a day, 200 builds a day. A lot of other places it's a lot more. Our applications our microservices are pretty simple. They don't take very long to build either, and we're able to do a lot of local development, so we don't have to run them through the build pipeline quite as much as some other people do. But yeah, probably I don't really know, because I don't have to, like, our builds are completely hands off, so I don't really need to do anything. The desktop is hot. Yeah, I mean, I make sure, I like to add a little pizzazz. Like, one day I'm gonna show you guys my work laptop. Like, I didn't take a lot of time to kind of manage and customize this stream setup, just because I think we installed this like real time on stream. But mine is super customized. My work computer's like really customized. So one day I'll show you guys that. It's Pop OS. It's made by a company called System 76. And so this is actually my personal laptop. It's actually from them. My work laptop is a Dell XPS 15, and they work well with Linux. But my personal laptop is this Galago Pro. It's a Linux laptop right out of the box. I wanted to support them. I'm actually a huge supporter of open source software. I would run Linux 100% of the time if I could. I could, but I'm so busy nowadays that like I need the reliability of some of the tools that are on Windows and Mac for things like this. Like for streaming, I actually was streaming off of Pop OS for a little while, and for some reason it would like shut my computer down midstream like every single time. So I had to, again, I'm sure I could have figured the issue out. And it was not happening on the System 76 laptop. It was happening on this desktop that I built. So I'm sure there was some kind of a hardware incompatibility that I didn't set up right, or a wrong driver or something like that. But yeah, I don't have the time right now to deal with that. So I just I went with Windows for all of my content creation stuff. How did you go about learning DevOps? I started out like with Linux. I started out as like a Linux administrator and like a systems administrator, and I kind of, as the industry started changing and I started going on interviews, and they're like, hey, like, do you know about the cloud? Like, what do you know about AWS? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I heard you can run VMs there. And I saw like, oh, now like people start asking me about containers and asking me about Puppet. And like, I was like, oh, I don't know about any of these things. And so I got a Linux Academy subscription, and I started learning how to do DevOps, which was, at the time, I thought I thought I was doing the right thing. But I wasn't really learning how to do DevOps. I was learning how to use DevOps tools. Didn't really know how to solve problems with them, but I knew how to use the tools. People will give you jobs for that. People will give you jobs for knowing the tools. And so, yeah, I mean, I really think if you have the extra money to spend for a service like Linux Academy, they just hiked their prices, so it's really hard for me to recommend them. Like when it was $29, I thought it was perfect, but now I think it's like $49 a month. I think it's a little pricey, to be honest. But they have a huge suite of courses that can help you kind of dive deeper into the things that we've dived into so far. And again, I'm going to be running through a lot of these things as time goes on. But again, you want to learn this stuff as fast as possible. So I definitely recommend spending a little money to kind of get some of those courses for sure. But yeah, just again, learning DevOps, start somewhere. Start with, again, I tell people to either start with the cloud or start with Linux. Start with Linux or start with the cloud. And because you can get a job just knowing one of those things, and you can build on top of that as you go on. Work-life balance as a DevOps person is excellent if I was just doing my daily job, but I do this, and I spend a significant time like doing this, like preparing for this and like other training things. So like I I pull back from it a bit, but I help run a meetup here in Baltimore. I do some free training courses, around the Baltimore area and stuff like that. So I spend a lot of time outside of that, but my work-life balance, just as a DevOps engineer, is actually really, really good. I could, it's really good. I can work from home when I want. I can work from different places when I want. I'm fortunate enough that the project that we're on is stable enough where I'm not on call or anything. I'm never up in the middle of the night, like doing things like ever. Yeah, I mean, but there are places where, on call is a thing, but you usually get paid for it. Make sure if you're going to have on call, make sure like there's some type of perk for being on call, because some places you get called a lot off hours. So make sure you do that. But my experience so far is that I've had a great work-life balance doing DevOps things for sure. Fancy coder. Yeah. Yes. I do think that's a problem. Your name is in blue, so I can't really see. Was that Fire mixtape? Yeah, I do think it was an NVC coder on Linux. I just didn't feel like messing with it. To be honest, I think it was an encoding problem. But you're a broke college student, and so yeah. So if you can't show out the money, I think things like maybe you missed this, but what was it? It was what was the run data? No, it was, what was the website for roadmap.sh. So I would head over to roadmap.sh/DevOps. If you're a broke college student, or you just don't want to spend the money, or you're broke non-college student, because most of us are broke, to be honest. But I would head over to here, and I would use this as a guideline. You can learn anything off of YouTube and Google. You can read articles about anything, but the hard part is having a curated like list of like what you should dive into, and use this as a baseline. I think this thing is perfect, and I built the whole course off of this roadmap. And so I think that's what you should do to start learning DevOps. Hop into here, hop into just one of each thing in this category. There are 9 categories here. Learn one item out of all of these 9 things, and then now you'll have 9 things to learn, and that is the best way, and you can do that for free. But yeah, Udemy $9 specials is the best. I love Udemy or Udemy. I love it for sure. Let's see. What are your daily activities or most frequent activities? I assume you're talking about DevOps activities. I spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time managing AWS infrastructure and adding and optimizing AWS infrastructure, as well as troubleshooting and writing application code for a Node React project, which is very interesting. So I actually write a lot of surprising amount of JavaScript right now. But yeah, I spend most of my time managing AWS infrastructure and kind of trying to learn and make decisions about application architecture as well. So that's what I spend most of my days doing. Cool. So let's hop into a few more of these interview questions. Let's get into some of the individual tooling ones. We saw some of the high level DevOps ones. Where was I? Oh, here we go. So we saw some of the DevOps stuff, but I think it's important to see what kind of questions you might get asked about specific technologies, because we could take one like Terraform, which I'm absolutely not an expert at Terraform. I'm actually relatively new to Terraform. I actually know I know a ton about CloudFormation, and I know a lot about Terraform now, but I'm for sure not an expert in Terraform. So it's also beneficial for me to see things like this, and like I think things like this will always be beneficial. But it's good to see what kind of specific questions you'll get about a product, about an actual technology. So you can see here, like this one is like not a Terraform specific one. This is kind of your higher level infrastructure as code thing. You know, what benefits does that have? You know, repeatability, you know, reliability, things like that. You know, gives you instant documentation. So you get questions like that. But this is very interesting. Can you explain what Terraform is and how it works? That's the first question. And that's very intimidating if you have no idea what Terraform is. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It looks like it sends you to a README. But yeah, Terraform, I'll explain it. I mean, it's an infrastructure provisioning tool that is platform agnostic. You can build providers to work with any platform that you like. It works. What I think is that it works by interacting with the APIs that exist for a tool or service, and it converts its own a domain specific language. They call it HCL, the HashiCorp language or something like that. And it uses that configuration and it converts that into code that that the API can handle, and it uses those providers to do that. And it uses that to deploy your infrastructure and to build your resources. Maybe that's a high level explanation of it. I think it's okay. But like I said, I'm much bigger on CloudFormation for sure. But yeah, so you have questions like, you know, what is this technology and how do you use it? How does it work? You'll get very specific things like, what is a Terraform TF state file? You know, that's the file that's used to manage state and the current state of these resources. Keeps track of what's the IDs and created resources that Terraform knows what it's managing. You'll get into, you know, very specific things in the tools. And so this is why it's very important not to put things on your resume or to not over highlight anything that you have on your resume that you don't necessarily know a lot, because if you're supposed to know these things, people will ask you questions like this. And if you've barely touched Terraform and I ask you like, hey, like, you know, what does Terraform init do or Terraform plan? You should know those things. And if you don't know those things because you haven't touched it very much, it looks kind of bad when they're asking you some of the beginner questions about this tool that you say you use a lot. Yeah, so Terraform is pretty cool, and so we did some Terraform stuff. So maybe it's worth going back to the video we did of Terraform and maybe see if you can, you know, answer some of these things. And again, maybe you can add to these questions here, and maybe I'll try to add to them as well. As I'm learning Terraform, I can reference these questions to make sure I really understand what Terraform does and you know, and know how to speak about it properly. So another way you can use this this whole repo is, you know, when you pull up a job description, they've got all these tools on there. Usually they'll say like, oh, has done something, you know, has set up CI pipelines, because you know they're gonna have a CI pipeline with the tool that they use. So like with Jenkins or other tools. And so it's like, all right, well, obviously they probably use Jenkins. So let me go ahead and let me, you know, as I'm learning Jenkins, let me go into this specific Jenkins section here. And while I'm learning it, let me see if I can go through and start to answer some of these questions. Like, let's make sure I know what Jenkins is, and let's make sure I know, you know, what kind of plugins it has and how to install them. And again, you can see a lot of the questions overlap. Like all these could be modified to be used with any other tool. So explain CI/CD and how you implemented it with Jenkins. And that's very important because the way you implement it with Jenkins is not the same way you implement it with Circle CI. So you can get yourself in trouble. Like you can say, hey, I know CI/CD, and believe you can answer any question you want about Jenkins, and you can see that they want Jenkins, so you threw Jenkins on your resume because you know what it is, and you know what problem it solves, but you never used it before. And so when they ask you, you know, how you implemented it, you're gonna have to be real vague on how you did that if you've never done it with that. So yeah, these are the kind of questions you can get when you put out a specific tool, how to secure Jenkins. And again, this is something that's very different from how you would secure some of the other tools in this space as well. So like, this is very, very interesting. And these are beginner questions. And then, you know, some of the advanced ones, knowing limitations of a tool. So the tooling questions can get very specific. So what are some limitations? What is it not good at? how do you acquire multiple slaves for one specific build? These are all very, very specific Jenkins things. And these are common. I can tell you right now, I've used Jenkins a fair amount. These are all very common use cases for Jenkins. So although they're advanced, these are questions that you would know if you have used Jenkins a fair amount, for sure. So, Terraform, AWS, Kubernetes is the Google. It looks like everyone started answering that, but no, it is not. It is not. Terraform to AWS is whatever Google's infrastructure is code. Let's find that out now, because I actually don't know, and I would love to be able to speak intelligently about Google Cloud Platform, to be honest. That is something that I'm planning on diving into next year. I want to learn a lot about GCP, but GCP provisioning tool. Maybe that'll come up. Infrastructure as code, Google Cloud. Let's see what they have. Oh, do they just call theirs infrastructure? Oh, so it looks like they have theirs. Theirs is called deployment manager. So, yeah. So back to your question. Terraform is to AWS. Oh no. Terraform to AWS. I don't even know why I looked that far. Terraform to AWS is what Terraform is also to Google. They're equivalent, and you can see Terraform right here. Terraform is equivalent for both of them, and Terraform is to AWS, as Terraform is to Google, as Terraform is to Azure. But what is deployment manager to Google is what CloudFormation is to AWS, is what Microsoft's resource. They have some resource tool. So yeah, that's yeah. So Kubernetes to Google would actually be EKS to AWS. It would actually be EKS, and that would be AKS to Azure. That's just the service that they have for that. Yeah. Let's see. Cool. Let's take a look at some more of these. I'm super duper impressed. I'm like really impressed by this. Like, I love that someone this thoughtfully put out this. I'm actually interested to see the AWS stuff, and it's funny they only have beginner AWS questions. Look how many they have. Let's see, beginner AWS questions. Availability zones, regions, edge locations. We talked about a lot of this stuff. I don't know if we covered all of this. Explain what S3 is and what it's used for. So object storage, simple storage service, to bucket. Oh man, these are great. Now, what I can tell from this already though is that if I sent you here for you to like get ready for a DevOps interview, there's so much here. And again, we went over stuff for 12 weeks and we only surface level touched most of it. But like, this would be very overwhelming for me if I was starting out. Like, this would be very scary to me. And so what I would tell you to do is, again, to focus on a specific area at a time. Instead of trying to go through and remember questions for tons of stuff, grab, as you're learning Linux, go in and get these questions down. Like, get comfortable with these questions here. And then once you're good with those questions, start to pick up, because you know a little bit about, you touched everything. Again, know how to speak about the high level concept, but take these one at a time. If you can go in and be, if I know like, hey, you want to do DevOps and you're just great at Linux, I can work with you. You're someone who can work on the team, and we can do some stuff with that. If you're just great with AWS, but you still pick up everything else, we can work with that. But that would be my advice here: to pick up an individual. Let's turn the slide on. Pick up an individual tool and start there, because this is overwhelming. And then don't forget though, this is also an open source project with a bunch of questions that our community submitted. So you won't like, no, you'll get questions that aren't on here, and you'll get way easier questions than the ones that are on here as well. So keep that in mind as well. There are levels to all of this stuff, for sure. Casual research volunteer in the summer. Check that out. That looks cool. All right. Appreciate it. Yeah, cool. So just make sure you guys check this out. This is great. I would really love to start seeing people contribute to this. Like this is and actually let me see if I can to open source GitHub. Let me give you guys like a step-by-step guide, just because this can be annoying. And I would also check out a YouTube video. Like Git is its own animal, and maybe we'll do maybe after the retro, I was trying to figure out something to do that Wednesday, because I didn't want to start like a series like off that Wednesday. Maybe next Wednesday we'll do an entire Git workshop, because this I found Git as someone who came from an ops background, I found Git to be like to really learn Git to be a little complicated. And I think the only reason that was because originally when you first try to learn how to use Git, they throw the Git add, Git commit, Git push in your face, and you're like, oh, like, this is so easy. And I think that lulled me into a false sense of security. And when I was using it originally, before ops really started to morph into DevOps and start to actually have more things to codify, I would be working by myself. So when I was using Git, it was super easy because I was just doing that. But Git gets great. Its value is when you're working on a team, a distributed team, and knowing how to understanding the true workflows of Git is I don't know. I find it to be fairly simple now that I've kind of hopped into it, but it seems like most people have trouble wrapping their head around what's really happening with Git. So I think it'll be important for us to go through that. But the step-by-step guide might show you how to, if you just want to update some of the stuff that's in here, if you just want to, add to some of these questions, maybe you have some interview questions that you've been asked recently that you can answer. It might be cool to add in some stuff there. I'm definitely gonna hop in and answer some of these. But cool, it's after 10. I just want to thank you guys like a ton for sticking around for this 12 weeks. Like I really, really appreciate it. Like again, this was for anyone who's brand new, who's joined the middle of the stream or something. We're wrapping up a 12-week session, a boot camp, a DevOps boot camp, and we just learned about the interview process, but we touched a lot of different things. For anyone who doesn't know, we're running this again. I'm probably not running this again though until after the new year. So I'll be running a bunch of streams continuously up until the new year, and it'll actually be more days than just Monday and Wednesday. But again, those will be ad hoc things. They'll be smaller little workshops. Again, 1 week, 1 day, specific things that won't all be DevOps related. We'll start doing some more software stuff, but January 1st, or actually, let's look at the calendar really quick. The plan actually is to do January, the first week in January. So actually, I may wait until the 6th because that's the first Monday. But the first Monday or Sunday, depending on the days that this breaks down to, I'm actually going to be running this one over again, the DevOps one over again. I'm going to go back after the retro, make things better, talk about, might switch up some of the tooling, add some more content, make sure we share some things up with that. But I'm also going to be running the intro to Python one. So the Python one will run concurrent with this one. So this will be 2 days, and the Python one will either be like Sunday for like 4 hours, or it'll be something like Sunday, Tuesday, and this will be Monday, Wednesday. So that should be interesting. We'll see how that goes. So I'm developing the Python one right now. I think that one's gonna be fun. I've had a lot of people who are really interested in the programming portion, but understanding it'll be more of a computer science course. It won't be a web development course. We're going to be using Python as the language, but it's going to be an intro to computer science for the most part, more than like a web development workshop. I do plan on doing a web development one, but I don't want to do the web development one. I want to find someone who's willing to do the web development one because, I think there's some options for scalability for this. So this is fun. I've had some interest. So if you're interested in teaching something, let me know. Again, the goal of this is really just to be able to give people this information. I love this stuff. Tech again has been it's been good to me. It's allowed me to do things that I never thought I would be able to do. And I think it can change people's lives. So I'm just sharing what I know, to be 100% honest. And I have a good time doing it. So you guys have been great at making me feel welcome. You guys have giving me great feedback. I'm always open for feedback. If you're on the Slack, please feel free to shoot me a message. I'm very open to feedback. My feelings aren't going to be hurt. People have given me some amazing things. I have them all written down. And so when we hop into the retro, you guys might be interested to see. I may have either giving you a little response or not giving you a full response, but I've noted all those things down and things that I thought were very valuable that I think that I really want to change for next time. I've noted all those things, and I'm going to be asking for more feedback then. So think about the things that you liked about this, things that you didn't like, things that you think would be cool if we tried next time, and definitely let me know. Definitely let me know those things. And again, that's what I'll be putting out some verbiage around this, but Monday, that's what we'll be running. We'll be running a retrospective on the last 12 weeks. Probably won't be 2 hours, but we'll be doing that. It should be pretty fun. And then the following week, probably on Wednesday, we'll probably be doing Git. And the next week, we'll be probably doing 2 weeks of Scrum, of Agile Scrum, and how that, we'll be learning about it and how that process fits into the development process. But yeah, that is it. So let me see what you guys are saying here. A lot of chat commands here. So do we tune in next Monday? Yeah, I would love for you to tune in next Monday, especially if you've been a part of the process. Tune in next Monday. Just let me know. Again, you don't need to stick around the whole time, but I'm really looking for some feedback. I want to share the things that were fun about this for me, and the things that I struggled with, and things that just the whole thing's gonna be talking about how this went and the value of it. So again, let me know what worked for you, what you didn't like. If you're like, hey man, I hate the music, I want some new music. If you're like, hey, the time we were going over this, I love this example, or I hated this example. I'm looking for things like that. Because again, the goal is to make this as accessible and approachable for as many people as possible. So yeah, that's what'll be on Monday. So hopefully, if you can tune in for that, that would be great. First off, let me give a big shout out to Suge, man. Suge White, you've been super helpful. You asked to be a moderator, then you've been moderating the hell out of this. I really appreciate it. I was part of what I'm gonna be doing between now and the next bootcamp is getting more up to speed on Twitch itself and all the cool stuff that Twitch has to offer. I'd really like to be able to do things as fast as you're doing things. So I really want to give you a shout out, super duper, really appreciate it for sure. The best CM Jones talking about applying to Fearless, and perfect, awesome. I will message you about that. Everyone should apply to Fearless and should tell me you're applying first. I will take you to dinner after you get the job here. But yeah, if you're interested, the company that I work at, fearless.tech is the website. Check it out. See if there's anything. We're actually hiring for a full stack software engineer right now. So if you're a full stack engineer, want to work at a pretty dope company out of Baltimore, let me know. I would love to help put you in contact with the right people for that, for sure. That's a bit important. Perfect. I'm glad. If you can't, like I said, I always like to tell people, that's why I give out the whole curriculum up front. I want people to know what they're getting into. Tune in for the stuff that's meaningful for you. And when you don't need the other stuff, don't worry about it. This is to help people, for sure. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, Opus. Moving to Maryland a couple months. Perfect. Yeah, you're moving. Hey, if you're moving to Maryland a couple months, hit me up, reach out to me, man. We can hang out. I can introduce you to people. Know a lot of companies around the area if you're looking for a job, but also if you just want to hang out and kind of meet some cool people. Like I said, I know a lot of cool people in the area, for sure. A .NET engineer. I don't think we do any .NET stuff right now. I don't think we do any .NET stuff right now, but maybe in the future. We have different projects coming in all the time, so I'm not sure. possibility for fully remote at Fearless. There are some fully remote people now. I think that's, as we've been growing, that's been something that I think we've been offering a little more. There are definitely fully remote people. So for sure, if you're interested, just reach out. I think each project has different requirements. I think some you can be, some you can't. But yeah, reach out. There are people who are fully remote here for sure. Question might be useful for more people as well with related to that. If someone wanted to do DevOps at Fearless and they've done the entire bootcamp with you, what things should they dive into a bit more to apply there? So that is an excellent question. I really like the specifics of that question. So if you've done the entire bootcamp, again, the goal the goal of the bootcamp was to know to get the higher level concepts of each of those 9 sections. Each of the 9 sections here. So the things that I would tell you to dive into to know would be the cloud, whether that be, so with this big Azure Jedi contract going to Microsoft, we're probably going to be looking for some Azure people. But also the government has just been taking on Azure a lot more. But the cloud, I would say the cloud is number one, specifically at Fearless. If you know the cloud, that is probably the most beneficial thing. AWS in particular, we do almost all of our contracts with AWS right now. So AWS is the number one thing I would tell you to dive into deeper, and to really know. And then after that, I would say the cloud, specifically AWS. We're big into containers here as well. So containers, and we're just starting to get into Kubernetes. So that will give you a leg up if you knew Kubernetes. There aren't a lot of people here who are amazing at Kubernetes. So containers and Kubernetes, and we can help you out with some CI/CD stuff. And then maybe, the way we've started doing things, pick up a programming language as well. And I think you're good. We do. Yeah, I think that's what I would say. But I do like the specifics of that for sure. But for anyone looking for a DevOps job, if you can get comfortable at talking about these things, like, if you can get comfortable enough with the programming language to solve some problems, that's probably going to be the hardest one to do. Some OS concepts, if you can talk about, usually people don't ask too many OS concept stuff in interviews anymore, but if you can learn some Linux and learn how to talk about it a little bit, learn about managing servers, if you can learn, I will focus on a little bit of security. People probably won't ask you a ton of networking questions, but security, some web server stuff, infrastructure as code, CI/CD, cloud providers are probably the 3 huge ones. You can talk about those things. I mean, I do think you're equipped to get a job if you can have a good understanding of those things, and you can have medium deep knowledge in one of the things. If you just know one, if you know Linux really well, or the cloud really well, and then you have an understanding of what each of these different categories is, I think you're in a good place to start looking for jobs. The cloud is so boring. Learning about the cloud is very boring. And I think the benefit that I had is that I was dealing with infrastructure and systems well before I started learning about the cloud. So it was more applicable, and I was kind of working backwards. Like when I was learning about stuff, I was like, oh, like, yeah, that's equivalent to all this that I've done already. And so it made a little more sense. I do think learning, like when I'm studying for the Solutions Architect Pro right now, it's very boring. Like it's very boring to study for it. It is, but it does. Suge's right. It pays the big bucks. It does. It really does. But I get it. I do think it can be kind of boring. But perfect. Yeah. You touched all 3, which is perfect. I'm actually really excited I'm going to do some personal projects, I think, in GCP, because I think it's easier to get professional experience in Azure and AWS. So I think I'm going to do some personal projects in GCP because I do want to get up to speed in GCP. They're actually putting a lot of money into into expanding their cloud as well right now. Let's see. Are any books or video series that you recommend for a deep dive into some of those topics? Yes. So there are a lot of Udemy courses. Seriously, there's actually, let me pull it up right now I probably have to pull it up main desktop. I do want to show you guys this course on, if you're trying to learn how to code. I found this supremely beneficial, and I didn't even finish it. Make this a little bigger. Let's go to the desktop view. Let's make this a little bigger. Make everything a little bit bigger. These are just some of my courses that I have inside of Udemy. I found that I tweeted about it the other day. I found that I stopped using these quite as much, and I've gone to I've gone to documentation now. I'm at the point where I generally go straight to documentation, and that helps. But if you want to learn how to, I don't know why it says only 19%. I finished this whole thing, but if you want to learn Go, but not even just Go, like if you want to learn, if you want a cheap computer science course, this guy Todd McLeod does like the best job. I learned so much about it really was like it was like career changing, the amount that I learned in this course. And let me grab this. I'll paste it, but I have a bunch of them. Maybe I'll make a repo of all the, I don't know how I can share all these that I found useful. This Git Masterclass, it's pretty good. It's short. It's only like 5 hours or something like that, 4 hours. It's good. If you're just trying to pick up like Python, the Python Bible is pretty good. That's this right here. If you're trying to learn the cloud, for resources, I exclusively tell people to go to A Cloud Guru. I would actually just get a membership to acloud.guru. If you want to learn the cloud, like I haven't found better resources than them yet, for sure. But yeah, A Cloud Guru. And besides that, I don't know. I don't have any specific resources that I found that were great, like books and stuff that I found were like amazing. So I would just, the ones that I've given you are the ones that like I've used a bunch. These are the ones that like I fully believe in, fully endorse. Like I really found a lot of benefit out of all of them. Besides that, man, there's the information's out there. Like it's definitely out there. No, nothing about Go. The scripting language, no, Go is statically typed compiled language that is it was born out of Google, and it's super fast, performant, pretty easy to write as well. Camera, oh wow, Camera did what? Well, that's because, okay, I'll fix that next time. That's because of the view that I was on. So thank you for that. Camera went super weird. What is Go used most often? So it's mostly used as like a systems language. People use it kind of on the back end. It's used to write a lot of APIs and stuff as well. Yeah, but it's mostly a systems language. You can build some pretty fast applications with it, for sure. Yeah, you can compile it down to single binary, run it on any system. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's only pretty cool. I'm partial to Go. And I think I'm partial to Go purely because there's a guy named, his name is Johnny Borsico. He's in the Baltimore area. He's like the Go master. He's got a couple courses that I'll share with you guys one day. But he runs something called Go Bridge. Well, he helps run an organization called Go Bridge. There's also one called like Ruby Bridge. They're the same organization, but they basically go around and give these free coding workshops to get people, disadvantaged people into these different languages, like these like kind of newer languages, well-paying languages. And so he did a workshop here in Baltimore, and I went just to check it out, and it was really interesting. And had a good time there. And so he did it once, and the next time I actually came back and TA'd for it because it was pretty cool. But because of that, that's why I bought the Go course on Udemy. And I think because that's the course that taught me because I don't have a computer science background, because that's the one that taught me computer science things rather than like introduction to coding concepts, I think I attached to it a little bit better. And I think that is why that course was really amazing to me. Like the guy's a little weird. Sometimes he goes on these little tangents, but man, like I learned a lot in that course. So yeah, I think that's why I like Go. And it does, if you're a developer, it does pay well. Like there aren't the amount of jobs aren't crazy high, but like the jobs that there are for Go, they pay very well. Oh, dope. Yeah, you went to the course in Toronto. Yeah, I wanna, I wanted to go to, I wanted to go to that one, to be honest. Didn't get to go. Um, I'm actually running one on November 16th here in Baltimore, but it's not completely open to everyone yet. It will be, but I can't put out the information yet for it because it's for a particular organization. But they're gonna open up space. If it doesn't fill up, they're gonna open it up. So I am running one here. Let's see, concept of Go. Language syntax is so awkward to me. And so that is why it was hard. Exactly what you said, Abyss, about it being awkward is why I had a hard time. I had a really hard time like going to JavaScript from Go because I found it to be so odd. Yeah, so like super odd. So I guess it's just what you learn first. A full course on Linux Academy right around me. Oh, dope. How did you feel about that? I have some. Even though I recommend Linux Academy a lot, I have some strong feelings about Linux Academy. One day I'll put them out there. I have some strong feelings about those people. I'm sure they're good people, but yeah, they actually, I'm gonna tell it now. I think it's a perfect time to tell it. They actually posted a part-time DevOps architect course, and not course, job, and I was like, this is perfect. Like this sounds like exactly what I want to do. Didn't even know I wanted to do it yet. And I was like, I feel like I'm perfect for this. So I applied, I interviewed. I thought the interview went really well, but I got a rejection letter pretty immediately right after, and I asked for some feedback, and the feedback I got was a little weird. Like it was just like not really like a company fit. I get that. I wish I would have got something a little more specific, but that is that is a huge reason why you're watching this right now, is because they gave like that job posting. Gave me the idea to do this. I didn't even know. I was running boot camps not running boot camp. I was running meetups and stuff and like doing some courses around, but like they gave, like, honestly, their job posting gave me the idea to do this, to be 100% honest. So, I mean, I both thank them and I'm a little mad at them for, I don't know, feel like I deserved it, but that's what everyone feels. So no biggie there, but yeah, one day I'll give them my money again, because they have some good courses on there, and I like to stay up to date with all the new tech, so maybe I will. Most elegant bash is the push. It's on your screen. It's on my screen. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. You guys have an office in my state. Fire Mixup, are you in Alabama? If you're in Alabama, then we are about to have an office in your state. Yeah, actually, if anyone is in Alabama and wants to get hired, yes, reach out to me right now. Right, anyone who's in Alabama or near Alabama or willing to go to Montgomery, I think, or Montgomery, Alabama. Let me know, for sure. We're opening up an office down there, for sure. I heard. I haven't gotten to go down there yet. People have said good things though. People have been surprised, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping. You know, the DevOps stuff is, there seems to be information about everything else besides like DevOps and SRE stuff. So figured I would give that market some love. I'll see if I'm able to effectively teach the like the introduction to coding stuff. I think I'll be okay, but we'll see if people, there's so many resources for it that I don't know whether it'll be worth it or not. Just trying to, fill the gaps that are missing. I'm not paying for Linux Academy, though my work is dope. Yeah, if your company's paying for it, do it. Man, that's one of the best things. Like here, we have like we get $4,000 a year for professional development. So like usually at the end of the year, whatever I have left over, I just use to get all kinds of subscriptions, which is great. That's also something that you should do. If you got some extra money lying around and you're worried about like learning this stuff, or you really want to take some time to get like up to speed on stuff, like invest in a subscription to something, purchase a course, and set aside genuine time to go through it. Like you can make it a habit. Like I ended up making it a habit somehow. I ended up making it a habit, and I would just spend like only Saturday mornings. Like I wouldn't do it during the week at all. Saturday mornings, I would just wake up a little bit early. I wake up at like 8 and just run over to Starbucks, and I'll work from like 8 to 10:30, 8 to 11, and I'll learn something new. And it will be like it piles on, it snowballs so fast. Like especially if you already have a job, that's easy. It's like really easy to do. I know it can be tough if you're trying to get that first one, but like especially if you already have one, like just grab a couple hours out of your week, 3 hours out of your week, and spend it like running through some videos. Even if you're not getting every bit of information, like just run through it, and you'll do great. A few hours from there, yeah. I'm last year college, so maybe I'm ready to apply there. Yeah, yes, 100%. Don't be afraid to apply anywhere. Go finish up school. When you're almost ready, let people know. But network, like Fearless is a great place, but like there is also many other great companies out there. And start to get to know people. Get to know people in the chat. Find different meetups near you and Slack groups and stuff, and start talking to people. Let them know what you're interested in. And I'm telling you, if you can get comfortable with putting yourself out there, that's like you can definitely find good spots for yourself. So we can schedule for doing courses. Yeah, no, 100%. Like that schedule really helps. Like setting aside time really, really helps. And yeah, cool. All right, it's 10:25. I'm actually gonna hop off this time, but again, I really appreciate everyone. I hope everyone got something out of today. I will see you all next week for the retro, and I'll send out information about that. So cool. Have a good night, everyone.